Our first guest to kick off our 2 weeks worth of coverage from IFA. Always a pleasure to have this gentleman on the program. He is the CEO of Messe Berlin, the group that, among other things, puts on IFA every year. Dr. Christian Goke. Christian, welcome into tomorrow once again. How are you?
Good, and as usual, a pleasure being here with you,
Well,
kicking it off.
It wouldn't be IFA if you didn't kick off the show.
If you
us.
say so, I'm not the one to say no.
Very good. Well, we're always delighted to have you because here's a show that not only continues to grow so dramatically, but has so much history. And we're talking about the first one of these. Neither of us, thank God, were around back then, but 1924.
Yes.
When it was pretty much a German radio show, right? I mean, that's what it was known as.
It was called the German Radio and Phonograph Show at that time, 1924. And as you just said, 70 years, 90 years until today.
Yeah.
The first 70 years actually were pretty much governed by two technological mega events and new technologies, radio and TV. Mm-hmm. And the last 20 years are more familiar to us now, were just packed by an acceleration of change in technologies. And internet obviously is the big thing for the last 20 years, with all. When it started in '94 with multimedia, that was what we were talking about. Later on, digitalization, connectivity, convergence. Right now it's all about convergence at our show.
And it's cool that you talked about how the last 20 years compared to the last 70 of
accelerated
this particular show.
tremendously.
Amazing changes.
I don't even know what these guys for the first 70 years presented every year. I mean, it's always radio.
Yeah, and phonograph, a new needle.
Yeah, well, who knows? I mean, they had glasses with an integrated radio transmitter and receiver already in the 50s. They actually, I heard about last week, they put a big, huge TV screen inside a wall in 1957 in order to indicate that there might be a future where the TV would be that flat that it could be hung as a picture on the wall. I mean, they had all these ideas, but in the very beginning it was really more about politics. I mean, in 1930, Albert Einstein opened the show and gave his by now famous opening keynote, telling us that at the end of the day, technology is enabling and making sure that democracy can really spread, the idea of democracy. So that was in the 1930s. Then, as we all know, the Second World War devastated all Europe and parts of the world. And then the show came back to Berlin in 1961. At least it was meant to come back to Berlin in 1961. And exactly 10 days before the show was meant to be opened, 10 days before that, at that time one of our predecessors received a call from Berlin telling him that in Berlin there was a wall built, this famous Berlin Wall.
Yeah.
And it literally cut off the entire city from all the lifelines, from all air and rail travel, and all the roads were blocked. And just imagine from an organizer's standpoint what that means. I mean, your city is completely under siege, and you are confronted with the decision: shall we continue? Could we make it? What does it mean? Will the people be able to travel to Berlin? Yes or no? And during that night, at that time, the as I said, our predecessor, he gave a call to the governing mayor of Berlin, Willy Brandt, who later became the chancellor. Of Germany.
Yeah.
And both discussed it briefly, came to the decision that this is the moment to take a stand, to position themselves, and they went into a frenzy of telephone calls with all the industry leaders that night of the 13th of August 1961, and convinced all the industry leaders to say yes and to continue and to make it happen. And
So in spite of this wall going up,
in spite of this wall going up, and with all the insecurities, they literally didn't know what would happen next if there would be tanks from the Russians coming in. So they didn't know it. And they said, no, we as a consumer industry, we will make a stand and we will position ourselves and we will help West Berlin. And that was, in historic and political terms, the first input, or the first, how to call that, the first major step that was taken with regard to the later world-known help campaign for West Berlin with the candy bombers from your esteemed country. And so this night was really, really probably the most decisive and the most impressive night and day for the history, or within the history of our show.
Oh, for sure.
And nowadays, I mean, we are so far away from these, at least we have been for the last decade, so far away from these political issues. Everybody assumed or took it for granted that we will be able to continue in peace for the next 70 years, at least in the States and in Western Europe and also in Eastern Europe. And we thought that the time of the Cold War would be over. And just these days we are living again a certain frightening status. And
it's almost like remnants of the Cold War.
Exactly,
again.
And that's why I thought that it might be a good idea to put some historical focus on our PR, remembering all of us, and that we can be so grateful if everything is running smoothly, and that yes, it is important if there is a new 4K technology, but at the end of the day, there are far more important things in life than 4K, yes or no.
A good point, because to show that history and how this industry, the consumer electronics industry, took that stand and said, no, literally, the show must go on.
Yes.
We have reasons to look at progress and talk about technology and not be afraid to take that stand. And it's a good thing they did. Now, conversely, should something, God forbid, like that happen today, we have other issues. Insurance companies get involved, and risk management, human resources,
governance, and
And
compliance.
it's like, oh, you better not. We're going to upset somebody.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh! But good thing they did, because it made a huge difference in the long run. By all means,
it set a good example.
Yeah, unbelievable. Well, and speaking of setting a good example, you've set the stage for us to now talk over the next 2 weeks with a lot of your exhibitors, a lot of folks that are showing some really fun products here. And we thank you for starting the broadcast once again here in Berlin for us to let people know that IFA is this global show that is truly all about bringing us into tomorrow.
Well, it is, and luckily enough, we are once again growing. As you know, for the last 5-10 years, we have had the luck to be on a good path. Our KPIs, our key performance indicators, our numbers are really good.
Yeah,
we more than doubled the number of our foreign trade visitors over the last 5 years.
Wow.
This year we finally could grow significantly again with regard to our rented space. We go up to 150,000 square meters rented.
Yeah, you have a whole new building,
exactly.
CityCube
The
Berlin.
CityCube made it possible. We built a new conference center / exhibition hall. Samsung took it, and we will see an impressive presentation by that company, which is a good starting point for that new building. It enables us to realize some long due changes with regard to the wish from some exhibitors to grow their stands, their booths. For instance, Sony was for a long time longing to get more space.
Yeah, they took up an entire hall, and it wasn't enough. They have so many products to show. Yeah.
So punchline is the show is doing very well in all relevant figures and numbers. So we are ready to rumble. And you in your introduction mentioned the number of 35,000 product premieres and product launches. For me, the more impressive fact behind that figure is that this number was below 20,000 before the year 2008, when the white goods industry decided to participate in our show. And they really felt that within their industry, the number of product premieres and product launches grew dramatically from the moment they decided to participate in our show. And that gives you an idea what is the true leverage of a participation in that show.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And ever since then, that element, as you say, continues to grow as well.
Yeah.
IFA-Berlin.com for more information about all the cool things here at IFA. And of course, IntoTomorrow.com will not only link you there, but you'll see the highlight video from this week's broadcast with all sorts of cool things from the show floor here, the multiple show floors here in Berlin. Dr. Christian Goke, the CEO of Messe Berlin, thanks for kicking off the broadcast. We'll make way now for your exhibitors.
Have a great week.
Thank you, sir. Back with more from Berlin, Germany. I'm Dave Graveline. This is Into Tomorrow on the Advanced Media Network.